Well, first off, I want to thank you for joining us here today. I appreciate you guys for reaching out, and especially you, Cole. Um, but before we get into like the heavy stuff, can you tell us a little bit about who Cole is, what you were doing before everything changed in your life?
Yeah, life was a little bit different than it is now for me, of course. I had just graduated high school in 2020. I was in college at the time, so obviously, around that time was COVID, and so my life was pretty different. And I went to college, freshman year in 2021, and it was a different experience for everybody, I think. It wasn't the true college experience. Everything was online, it
That's a
was.
cool thing.
Yep, exactly. And
Yeah.
so like, we didn't have in-person classes. Like it was very rare. Everybody was, they were, wearing masks and all that. And so, it was very, very different college experience for me. And that was already, something new. I was out of my comfort zone. Obviously, I was away from my family. And so, making new friends and making, just a life for myself, it was all brand new to me. So, it was all kind of being thrown. It's kind of what happens when you turn, 18 and you graduate high school. It's all new. And so I was really, I was studying engineering at my college I was going to, and I think, I was, just living life. I was trying to navigate the best I could, during those times. It was a little bit different for everybody, across the entire world. And so I think just for me, it was just trying to figure out my place in the world and how I was gonna, move on.
So you literally had just graduated high school, living the best life. I'm sorry, where are you? Where were you on the East Coast, West Coast?
I was in the
Where?
Midwest, so I'm from Wisconsin. So originally from Wisconsin, that's kind of like where I grew up my entire life, actually. So that's where I lived, prior to moving. But yes,
Because that's right. Now you live on the West Coast, right?
correct. Yep, I live in San Diego.
So now you're studying to be an engineer, and I take it this is kind of when you're in college, you're dealing with, you're also dealing with COVID, which the world was actually in 2021 was a little slowing down, but you still were
It
in
was
the
slowing
process.
down, but there was still impacts of, for example, my entire college experience, my first year was entirely online. I didn't have a single in-person class. So, there was, no real, sports going on. I was supposed to run track, at my college, and, the entire season got canceled. So, they were very, still stingent on what we were able to do.
I didn't realize they canceled outdoor sports also in colleges because I thought I had seen a few, but I guess that was probably more East Coast. But wow, that's a wild first like transition from like being a kid to now like you're trying to navigate what you're gonna do the rest of your life, and you're like, bam, you're just stuck. Were you in dorm rooms or were you at home at least?
I was in dorm room. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, I was able to travel home, a little bit here and there, but just being on campus, I was trying to make friends. I was trying to, just like make somewhat of a college experience. I was obviously paying so much to be there, like I wanted
Yeah,
to try it out, and so I was in a dorm room for my entire like first year and a half.
that's wild.
Yep. I would
Uh,
wake up and just go down to my desk, like two steps, and log on for the entire day.
that is that's I hate to say it, but that sucks.
Yeah.
But I guess that also I guess it's different character builder. We're just gonna look at that for the next generation, for
For
your
sure.
generation.
Yeah.
It's a different aspect of reality. So then, how did you discover what was about to change your life? Like when you found out that, or at least thought you had cancer or something wrong with you, because no one just knows.
Yeah, and I didn't know at the time, and I didn't know for several months later. However, I was sitting in class one day, and I just kind of like randomly like scratched my neck. It was just like a weird thing that I did, and all of a sudden I felt like a small little lump, like right around here, and I was like, that's really weird. That's not normal, and so I've always been a very healthy, kid, and even growing up in my teenage years, like no real health, medical issues. I was very active in sports, and so I was. I had a healthy lifestyle. I wasn't doing anything crazy, no, broken bones or anything. So it felt out of place, of course. And I immediately called my parents. I was like, hey, I found this. Like what should I do? I probably should go to the doctor. And they're like, yep, go to your doctor right now. Like call them up. Get a appointment like, scheduled. And so that's what I did.
Well, I gotta say, I think, and now that I've done this now several times, I'm finding there's like several key factors which I'm not very happy about, but that's more on the medical side. But on the patient side, I find people don't do what you did, and you should be very like, we're gonna have to like emphasize that because I want kids to know that you were like, oh, something's not right. Let me at least call my house. Let me find out what like the parents think, or at least like someone smarter than me, or like because I'm noticing kids just go like that and they like fuck it. And then just like 3 months would go by, 6 months would go by, and then they'd go home for like, I guess you'd probably go home for like a college vacation or something, and your mom would be like, "What is that?" You're
Yep.
like, "Oh yeah, it's been there for like 4 months." So it's like I think it's great that you were proactive in that.
I was proactive in that moment. I will have to admit that during this entire process, that lump that was there was probably about the size of a golf ball, and it was only noticeable, like like it was right underneath the collar of a shirt, and so like you couldn't really see it unless I had like my shirt pulled down or anything like that, and so nobody just looking at me every day, they're like, oh, they couldn't see it at all, so it
So
was
you
really
hid it? Did you hide it intentionally then going forward
no.
more?
Well,
No?
no, no, I didn't. I had no. Once I found out about it, I was trying to advocate honestly because um, what I didn't know is I looked back at pictures and I had that lump over a year prior,
Oh
and
wow.
I never noticed it. I looked back at videos, I looked back at pictures, and it was there, unfortunately, and I had no idea. Nobody in my life, I mean, they just didn't see it. Nobody knew about it, and so obviously during that time, everybody was trying to navigate what was going on in the world. So it was a different, I guess, time to figure
Well,
out.
it's also I find that the people around you, because a year before that would have been your family, right?
Yep.
When you're around people all day long, all the time, and they see you multiple times a week, they
Yep.
don't see slow changes. Like a weird story with me, which why don't we just share some more weird stuff about me? When I was Jarnus, and no one told me, and no one noticed. Like when I finally went to like the next top level, like liver specialist, she's like, you're Jarnus." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then, like, even looking in a mirror, you can't tell that you're a little yellow or like your eye because you see it every day.
Yeah.
But the second I wasn't Jarnus anymore, I noticed the difference real fast of what how it progressed. So it's like I find like it's really weird because the people around you who you think would notice the differences when they're just like you, they wouldn't see anything.
Yep.
It's a scary reality. And then a lot of medical fields don't really move fast enough sometimes, anyways.
Yes.
Even though we love the medical field. Um,
Yes. It does
I
take time, unfortunately, and I mean, every person that has even had to go for a normal appointment, it takes time to get into a doctor.
That's the biggest problem. That's why I'm a huge advocate for, especially now, even more, because the more I talk to individuals and all ages, and this is what's even scarier, is I'm like, did your doctor do blood work? And they're like, no. They're like, they had an idea, and we went to another specialist. That took 2 months to get in. And I was like, no one took blood work. I was like, you guys should just, everyone needs to demand blood work like every quarter.
You
Like,
really have to advocate for yourself. I mean, that
yeah,
is what I learned in my process. Like, I had never had to do all these different types of medical procedures and tests, and so you have to advocate for yourself in the medical system, even today.
yeah, no, you definitely have to. And that's a huge message that we, all of us need to make sure that we scream that from the top of the mountains. So you find out that you have this lump. You go into, I guess, did you go home for it or did you stay in college to deal
I
with
did.
it?
Yep. So I went home immediately. Essentially, I told my primary doctor. I got in for an appointment. I think the next day. So I did drive home. It was about like I was going to college like 2.5 hours away. Nothing like too crazy of a drive. And so I was able to go home. Got into the doctor's office, and he has been my doctor since I was born. So essentially, for 20, almost 20 years. I was 19 at the time. He has taken care of me, so he's been a very good doctor. He looked very concerned. So, I got into the appointment and he immediately knew something was off. He did his tests and everything. We did some blood work, and then, he said that we need to order an ultrasound. And so we need to see what the lump, is, what the mass is that is, attached right here. And so from there, he actually called down, to the ultrasound area, and they immediately was like, "Yep, send them down right now. We can get it done." And so I got it done the same day, which I think that's just,
That's
yeah,
luck.
it is because I think my doctor advocated for that as well because he's like, we need to get this done now. And he has been so kind, and I will, be ever grateful for his care during that process. And so I got the ultrasound done, and then maybe like 3 or 4 days later, I got the results back that it was a complex cystic mass with solid components. And essentially, what that means is, it's kind of like a cyst, with those solid components, meaning that that's a yeah, it's a possibility for further investigation that we need to look at. And so the next step, that I had to go through after that procedure was that I had to get a biopsy performed. And this biopsy is a special kind. It's not just your normal, dermatologist, biopsy or anything like that. And
What's for people who don't know, if that's
sure.
okay?
Yeah,
Because I know what I know biopsies for like liver is probably very different than this. So why is it so different?
I would say one, like I guess there was only two medical professionals in the system that I go to that are able to perform that procedure. So
Well,
what they had to do is they had to have I think it's an ultrasound wand on my neck so that they could get imaging while they're doing the biopsy. So they had to have that on like my right side of the neck, and then they took a very large needle. So
yeah,
warning, but like it was a large needle that they went in and they had to first numb it, but then they went directly into my neck. And obviously there's a lot of veins and your everything else that is in your neck. So it's you have to be very careful when you go in. And so it took about 3.5 weeks to get into that procedure. Like they
yeah.
wouldn't, there was no other thing. So I had to wait 3.5 weeks just with nothing before I could even get the procedure done.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like that's the medical field because they do have people lined up. But it's
Yep.
like, do you ever play like the what if someone noticed a year ago? How much more time would it have been? It's a million questions. It's weird
Yep.
that you say that. All the other stuff, yes. Wow, we're really taking me back to my like 20s. Um, for a liver biopsy, you have to be awake for yours also.
I did, yes. Yep, I was
Uh,
awake.
So you have to be conscious. And what they do is they have the ultrasound just so they can figure out where the two separating ribs are.
Hmm.
And then they take a metal rod and they slide it in between the two because then they take that device and they slide it all the way through into the liver and pull out. I can't believe I'm just showing that. And it's brutally painful,
Yep.
especially my body doesn't take on that Novocaine, doesn't work on me 99% of the time.
Hmm.
And I've had two or three liver biopsies. The third one, I was like, I just was lying. I was like, it's numb, don't worry, because we had waited like an hour and they kept injecting me and it wasn't taking. And I remember that was the most brutal thing I ever went through. But it was like, I just remember they're like, okay, now you gotta breathe, hold your breath. And you gotta sit there. And then they're like, okay, slowly let it out. Now you gotta breathe again because it had to go in between ribs. I was like,
Hmm.
I was like, they don't prep you for that.
Yeah, no, they do not. Yeah, I mean, even my procedure, I was like, I could see how large the needle was, and like, I'm awake, I can see him like, going into my neck. It was a very scary thing. And then obviously once they did the biopsy, he found, I guess, liquid or it was like blood from like,
Yeah.
whatever was inside there. And so he ended up draining it, just to, clear it up. And eventually it was back in a day. Like it literally, it could feel
Oh
completely.
wow.
So, um, during that procedure, after he was done, I guess he did say, like, hey, like this is attached to your thyroid, the left lobe, and so I really think that you need to have, a medical doctor or surgeon, have a discussion with you about possibly having surgery. And at that point, I had no idea I was gonna have to have surgery. Like I had no idea that there was no surgery. So like, of course I started to, panic a little bit. I mean, I'm 19. I'm in college. I'm trying to go back and forth between school and like figure this
Yeah.
out. And, my parents were obviously concerned a little bit. They had never navigated this before, and so I called, the doctor that they, referred me to, and of course, I had to wait a month to get into her. Um, you know, I had to wait, even just to see her. I mean, she really
Now
was
we're at
just,
like 3 months.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 3 or 4 months at that time. And so finally, I was able to, get into her and, meet with her. And they did, they reran the test to see how it was progressing and anything else. And I will say, after the biopsy, the lump was growing. So it was probably about the size of a golf ball. And, it got a little larger than that during, that month period. And so I told her about it, and she, was looking at it during that, I guess, visit.
So are they still, and forgive me if I missed it, are they still saying it's this benign mass, or have they confirmed yet
Correct.
anything past? So you're just still, so like, you're scared, but you're also like, it's just part of the process. It's benign. I don't have to worry. They're like
Yep.
reassuring me.
Yep. So I
So
guess
like,
a week after the biopsy, I did get results back that it was benign. So, like at that point, I really didn't have too many like cancer concerns. Nobody really brought it up like too much to me, because obviously that's a big word. When people tell you that you have cancer, like life stops
I
for a
think
second. And so I luckily, the results came back benign. It was all good. And so really it was just moving forward. It would just to be to meet with the surgeon to potentially have to remove the mass that was on my thyroid.
and I guess a stupid question, and just maybe more for my knowledge and maybe the community. When they had done blood work by now, right?
Yep.
Did the blood work show any like indications through like your red or white blood cells? Did they look at anything deeper than that? Did they even look at that? Like, do you know? Like,
As
because
far as I can remember, my blood work that my primary doctor did right away was all pretty normal. Like there was really no concerning, tests that they did. However, when I did some blood work with the surgeon, they did blood work because they're an endocrine surgeon. They're very familiar with thyroids and anything that's cancerous around there. So both my TSH and my thyroid globulin, which is two tests that are very common with the thyroid, they were like off the charts, like weird. And so like they were obviously concerned. And from those tests and from just what they had on the ultrasound, they kind of declared the left lobe of your thyroid, because you have two lobes, left and right. It's kind of shaped like a butterfly. The
yeah.
left lobe was like dead. It was not functioning. There was no function coming from the left side at all. And so from that finding, they said that the left lobe along with the mass would have to be surgically removed.
But that's more of like if it's not cancer, it's a common procedure these days. I feel like it's that's why there's a specialty in it because it is something that they see regularly, unfortunately,
Yep.
and
I
they're
mean,
probably
across all the
what?
world, I mean, like thyroid problems, there's hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism. So like, there's definitely, a lot of doctors around this area that know it very well.
And they still are not thinking past benign mass.
No, I mean, I really wasn't prepared at all. So, I mean, the surgeon said, "Yep, it's benign. We're good." Like, hey, 2 weeks down the road, like, or in 2 weeks, can you come back and we'll do the procedure? It's fairly, inpatient or outpatient. Like I would just, leave the same day. It's about like a 6-hour procedure in total. Obviously I'm put under.
And it's outpatient.
Yeah, I went home the same
Wow,
day. Yep, I went home
that's
the same day.
crazy of me.
I know. And so I immediately was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't do it in 2 weeks. Like, there was no real concern with the lump at the time. My surgeon was okay with me pushing it off. I had a family vacation in there. I was involved in the 4-H and state fairs where I live. And so, those are over the months of the summer. At this time, it was around like end of July. And I was like, I can't do that. It's really, like
So
uh,
hold on. I just want to like again. This comes back to like, and I know you're smiling too because I think you already know like what I'm about to ask you. It's like your doctor now has a diagnosis, and she's telling you we should get this out in like 2 weeks, and she's listening to a 19-year-old kid tell her, "Sorry, I have vacation," and she's just like, "Okay, let's go like another you said month and a half until we
it
push
was
it."
about a month and a half later. Yeah.
I don't even know like how to process that because like I've had so many surgeries. I've had surgeries where my friends were like, I've missed weddings because the last one then when I was like 29 that saved my life. Um, I missed one of my best friend's weddings. She's like, can't you just put it off for like 2 weeks? I was like, no. And she never talks to me again. So it's like, were your parents involved in this decision?
No, I think it was more me. It was really, I mean, at that time, obviously, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. I felt healthy enough. I was
That's just,
breathing fine. I will say, like the lump, with it growing, the surgeon and the team there were concerned that, it was going to start to restrict my like breathing in the esophagus area. So they were very like upfront. They're like, hey, you need to call us immediately if there's anything at all that you feel, restricting your breathing. And I mean, that's obviously their main concern.
you're like, sorry, I'll be on vacation.
I love to travel, and honestly, it was a family vacation, and I'm a big family person, and so being able to like just get out after the
And your
past
mom
year.
and dad didn't say, do you have siblings?
I do, yeah. I have a sister,
So your mom, your dad, and your sister, older, younger?
younger.
Younger. They weren't like, hey, Cole, we could just postpone this vacation. You should probably get this. Or did you not tell them this, like, every detail? Or were they there for every detail?
They were there for I think almost every appointment. My mom was at least. I mean, she came with me to the surgeon, the endocrine surgeon appointment. So I mean, it was really I think just on me to make that decision, and I felt healthy enough to do the few things. The recovery time was like 3 to 4 weeks, and so I knew that timeline. I wanted to make sure I could get a few things in, and they said, as long as I'm breathing fine, there's no real concern. we can push it out. And so I just agreed to it. I was a 19-year-old. I was a dumb, kid in college. I guess.
I mean, you're not dumb. You're just because here's the thing where adults need to step up, and it's kind of like they don't have to be 100% like across the board dictating it,
Mhm.
because I have plenty of stories where they should shut up, but it doesn't sound like they were like, this is concerning to us because it's now been 5 months or 4.5 months if I've been tracking it right, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
getting bigger. And, we're more concerned now with it like blocking your airway and causing other situations that you want to know what? Maybe you not going on vacation, we take care of this in 2 weeks, then you recover by the time you're going back to school. You'll be a young, healthy kid again, and let's just keep going. And just like, take this mass out. And it's just like everyone's like, no, you're right. Cool, you're good. You're 19 years old. Just go on vacation.
Yeah.
I just find that like they didn't. It doesn't sound like they pushed you with like every possible like reality to what could happen. And again, I don't. It's not like I mean you can't blame yourself or your mother or this or that because you're given information and they're. I don't want to say dumbing it down is not the right word, but it doesn't sound like they were telling you the severity of like this, and they still don't know it's cancer.
Correct. Yeah.
This is what's wild to me because now they've biopsied it. You've had multiple blood works,
Hmm.
and I feel like, is there a piece we're missing, or is this just like a
No.
wild ride of like unknowns?
It is a wild ride of unknowns. I mean, everybody, has their own story of, like what they, bring to the doctor. And if you don't share enough, then they're like, okay, yep, you're fine. And honestly, I think I maybe avoided a few things as in like I knew I wanted to go on this vacation. I knew I wanted to do like, these things over the summer. Obviously it was summer in Wisconsin. It's like nice weather. And so I didn't want to just be kind of like bedridden for like 3 or 4 weeks, not able to do, physical activity. Again, I'm very active in sports and stuff. And so I just, I love being outside. So I think I definitely probably pushed it off for various reasons.
Well, also they gave you that opportunity to not make it a drastic call right now. They gave you an out, which I find interesting, but that's a whole nother podcast, I guess, because they saved your life, so that's all that matters.
Yep.
But I'm so like I've just been learning like we have to be so much more proactive instead of reactive in these situations.
Hmm.
It's like if I saw a mat, I would just want it off my body, and you're like I can live with it for 5 more months.
Yeah, maybe not five, but yes. I mean, yeah, I think it was a weird time for me. I mean, I was trying to navigate everything that they were throwing at me. I had never been to that many doctors before. I mean, I had my like, annual checkup and it was good, nothing crazy. And so, once I, met with her and her team, they were very kind to me and they told me all the parameters. So, like, I was aware of everything. They told me the rundown of like, if you, feel, breathing constricted, anything like that, call us immediately. We need to move up the surgery. And so, that's kind of what just happened. I pushed it off. It was late August, so very late August. I was really just, living life during week, I guess, month and a half it was about.
What were you doing for fun? What
Well,
was
I guess during that month and a half where I pushed it
it
off,
that you just pushed it
um,
off? What were we
I
up
think it was
to?
on a beach somewhere. I think it was on a beach somewhere for like a week or two, and then I think the 4-H and state fairs. Yeah, so like I was in a 4-H member, and then I showed it at the state fair, so I showed dairy cattle. So I was kind of like
I was going to ask you. 4-H is for farm animals.
yeah, I mean it's kind of like a community club that you can do at the local or state or national level. And so I was involved since I was a young kid, and I showed dairy cattle, and I did several other projects like woodworking and photography and stuff. And it's just something I really really enjoyed, and I didn't want to have to miss that. Like
I,
these kids and me work so hard. I mean, the animals that we show, that we practice with day in day out are months and months. I mean, I had been practicing just leading mine probably for I don't know, like 5 or 6 months prior to that. Like, so like it's a lot of time to invest in that, and I'd have to give that up if I had the surgery.
because that's part of like the fun of this thing that you do, I guess, annually, and it does go with the stereotypes of Wisconsin and cheese when
It
you
does.
are walking a cow. I was going open with that, but I was like, I don't want to stereotype them, and now we're like right into. Um, all right, so you were having a good summer. The mass I'm taking is getting probably a little bigger
It was.
as
Yep.
the time, and now it comes time for, I guess, is it surgery or do you have to like is your surgery is planned? You push it off, and they go in. So you live your best life this summer. You go in, and like, Where did it go from like, okay, this is gonna be like 6 hours to my life just changed? Like, what was that moment? If you can share, however much you want or whatever you went through and like mentally or emotionally through it, because I feel like they've lined you up for just this easy course that you're gonna walk through, and now you're like hit with something that's real life.
Yeah, no, I mean, so really the time span of that, from the surgery to when I found out, it was about like 2 weeks. So my surgery was performed late August. Obviously it was outpatient, so my parents took me in for the surgery that day. I got in, everything went smoothly with the surgery. Um, Come to find out, so I guess the doctor. I wanted this is a weird request, but like I wanted the doctor to like show me like how big the lump was. I wanted to like see what it looked like. It just I was curious because I was just
A
like,
part of you.
yeah, exactly. And so the doctor actually took a picture of the left lobe of my thyroid along with the mass that was on there,
Uh-huh.
and what they removed actually stunned their entire team. So what they removed was the size of a mango.
Holy sh!
Yeah.
So it was
So
so surface level. It wasn't. It was just barely breaking
really
through.
like embedded. It was like embedded, like kind of like I don't know, near my collarbone somewhere, and they didn't even realize it prior. And obviously, it was growing. So from when I first found it, it seemed like a golf ball size to me, and maybe it wasn't, but I think that's kind of what I felt it was.
Well,
And
when they did the ultrasound, can't they see the volume of the mass?
yeah, and I guess it was not mango size, that's for sure. I don't think it was mango
Yes, that
size.
would have been more alarming, I hope, in
Yep.
Wisconsin.
So, yeah. So no, I think they weren't prepared for it to be that large at the time, and so what they removed was nearly a 9 centimeter mass.
Wow, that's and your thyroid.
Yep. Well, the left lobe. So yep. So the left lobe of my thyroid, and the mass entirely was 9 centimeters. And from that point, obviously, I was just
Wow,
recovering. I went home that day. They
which is
did.
still wild.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly like I was okay. Obviously I was under anesthesia, but there was no stitches. It was like glue. So I have a scar on my neck here. So there was
How
glue that
small?
sealed. What's that?
How small was the incision?
I mean, right here. So it's probably about 2.5 inches, maybe.
And they had no more stitches. Wow, I missed the
No,
medical
there
part
was
of that.
zero stitches. I mean, I have seen horror stories, which my case was a little bit different, but when, other surgeons, do this type of procedure, it depends if you have to go all the way up to your lymph nodes, like way up here.
Oh, and how
Um,
drastic it has to be.
some people have to have incisions from like their back ear all the way down, all the way
Oh,
back up. So
wow.
it's a very large incision mark. And I didn't know what I was coming out with, whatever they had to go, in to find. And of course, they weren't looking for cancer, so they didn't look to test, anything further.
That is. So now they have this mango,
Yep.
and you go home.
Yes.
Uh, I mean, farm boy, cows and fruit.
Yep.
Um, when do they like? When is the aha moment for these doctors?
Yeah.
Because
It
it's
was
not
actually
anymore for them.
2 weeks later. So I actually had the aha moment. It was not the
Oh,
doctors. So I was recovering. It was 1 a.m. I was in bed actually, just recovering. So essentially, what they have to do is they have to slice your muscle right here to get into the thyroid. And so obviously, I was very like restricted on my movement for my neck, and so I was laying on my back sleeping, which I don't do very easily. So I was getting zero sleep for those 2 weeks. I was just recovering, and at 1 a.m. I got a my chart message, and I was bored, so I looked at my
my
phone, of
side.
course. Yep, the my chart messages. And so I looked at my phone, logged into my chart, saw I had a new test result, and I looked at that test result. And unfortunately, I read my own cancer diagnosis.
That's gotta be crazy. Like, what did it say? Like specifically, like how did you know? Because sometimes I feel like people don't recognize that.
As soon as I saw like carcinoma, like the pathology results came back from the mass, and as soon as I saw carcinoma, I was like, I didn't know what those terms mean, and so I started reading through all the findings and everything, and this is at 1 a.m. on like a
Yeah.
Monday, I think it was. And so I started panicking. I think in that very moment, I was in a state of shock, of course. I had no idea what to think other than just to try and navigate learning what this meant. I think I plugged it into Google just to see what this is, and of course the first thing is thyroid cancer, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't prepared for this. Like I had no idea.
Did they at all Or did you at all also maybe think, well, maybe they messed up on diagnosing me, but they took it all out and removed my thyroid? Like maybe I don't have cancer. Like maybe I just need to speak to my doctor. Like what is this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there was a lot of questions going through my head, of what the prognosis is, what the next steps were, and all that. And so it was 1 a.m. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I was in like, panicking. My heart rate was, through the roof. And both my parents, they were going to work that day, and
I was
I
gonna
didn't,
say you
I
didn't
didn't,
wake them up.
no, I didn't because I didn't know how to process that. I mean, at that time, and like one, tell them, and so I really needed just time to figure it out myself. I wanted to let them go to work, a normal day for them. I was just, healthy, at the time, for their knowledge, and they went to work. I immediately called my doctor. I think 2 minutes after they opened their office, their clinic.
Yeah.
And so a nurse did pick up, which I was, happy about. And so I explained the situation like, hi, like I just got the results. I'm kind of freaking out. And you want to know what the nurse said?
Oh,
And
please.
this
I
this
think
is against her. Like, of course, this is just they had just opened, and I had just learned I have cancer that was not known prior. And I said, hi, like I have this situation going on. Can I speak with the surgeon? Like I really need to know what the next steps are. What to do. And she goes, oh yeah, you can speak to your surgeon next week at your appointment, and she'll go over everything.
she doesn't realize it's like like a young adult, like freak, and you probably were freaking the fuck
I
out.
was,
Like
yep,
you're,
I was
you're
shaking on the phone.
probably like, yeah, like, and she's just like, he'll call you next week.
Yep.
Like that is the stuff that drives me bonkers, because
Mhm.
that only adds to your fear now, or you're also if you become one of these, which I always tell people, don't Google, even though we all Google, but like don't go to like these like influencers who are like health professionals and let them tell you go like rub lemon juice on your head. Like I just want people to like a nurse should be able to like hear this kid or young man is freaking out, be like, all right, he's not in yet. Let me get him a message. I'll text him. I'll call him, and he'll call you before the end of the day. Like
Mhm.
just breathe. Instead, it's like so now you're stuck at home.
Yep.
Your parents are now off to work,
Hmm.
and your little sister is
I think she was at a friend's or something that time. She wasn't home. I was home alone with my dogs, our family dogs, and so I was just trying to navigate the next step after getting off the phone call with the nurse. I was like, wow.
I mean, you must have been
So
in a state of like shock.
I was, unfortunately, and so I think at that time after the phone call, I did Google. I started researching as much as I could to learn more about what the thyroid does for your body. Um, I had no real knowledge, I guess, of what it, all maintained. And your thyroid, as small as it is, does a lot for your body. And so immediately my concern was, wow, like, have I not noticed the signs, of what the, like, what thyroid cancer does, what was prior, when I had the lump. I was rethinking every single thing that I, thought of prior to the surgery. And I was like, wow, did I miss so many signs? And honestly, I think I did. So one of the concerns when your thyroid isn't properly functioning is your hair can get like really really brittle, like hard, not hard, but like just it's not soft and kind of fluffy.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, like I remember trying to like brush out my hair. I'm like, wow, like why is it so like tough to like
Oh,
brush?
wow.
And
Like
that's a
when you were
sign.
like 18-ish, 19,
Yeah,
like
like 18, 19, like when that like
wow.
that year period. And I was like, wow, did I miss so many signs that I
Well,
should
you
have known?
don't miss because you don't know.
I mean, yes, that is true. Yes.
You can't stay in the what ifs. I always say to people in anything you do because you're gonna carry that then the rest of your life with you, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy just in general, but it's also not healthy to keep that energy in your body because that's
Mhm.
we all know negative energy is bad for your body to fight
Mhm.
and stay strong. So
Yeah.
it's like, and plus, your doctors were giving you all great signs anyways by the time you would have thought anything, and you went in when you realized. So it's like you did all the proper steps.
I think the medical team obviously they did the best they could during like those first 4.5 months. They didn't know, what the obviously it was cancer, of course, but I was a 19-year-old male um, with this obviously mass on my thyroid. It's very uncommon for my age group, especially male, to have thyroid cancer. It's typically found in females, so it was a very, I guess, low chance of
That I
probability.
didn't know.
What's that?
I didn't know that.
Yep.
It's more
So
of a female thing.
It is more of a female thing. Typically, they have a higher rate of thyroid cancer or thyroid issues. And so, I mean, I know people now, in my life that are very close to me, like, oh yeah, hey, like I'm, on this medication for my thyroid. I'm like, wow, I didn't know so many people had thyroid issues.
Wow. So now you're sitting at home, the day is passing by, you're Googling, you're probably getting 10 times more stressed out.
Hmm.
And like, what happens next? Like,
Yeah.
do you speak to your family that day? Do you call back the doctors or call other doctors? Do you try to find
I
it?
I left a voicemail at my primary doctor for him to call me back. I was obviously trying to reach him. He helped me from the very beginning, so I reached out to him. Didn't hear back yet. Luckily, I think about it was like 3.5, 4 hours later that I called the nurse
Again.
from my clinic where I had the surgeon, the surgery at.
Oh,
The
okay.
surgeon, the endocrine surgeon that performed the procedure, did call me back, and I was so thankful to see that phone call come through because I was still freaking out. And
Good.
she
God.
apologized, from the very beginning of like, I'm so sorry this is happening. She explained everything from the very first thing that I would have to do to the very end of what the next step would be from her, advice. And
Uh-huh.
so, she just she gave me some comfort that, of what I needed to hear from a medical professional, of like what I need to do to move forward. She's been in this industry for a long time, and I really appreciated her, expertise. And so it was really cool. She was able to calm me down for one. My nerves eased a little bit. But she talked me through the next steps of what I would have to do. I'd have to come in for another appointment, meet with them. I could have a second opinion if I wanted to go somewhere else of like, hey, what the next steps were. And so I think at that time, I was really just processing everything still. I mean, even though she called me back and she helped ease my concerns, it still was so much to process for me. I was like, what is my life going to be like in the next, few months? I mean, at this time it was September, and so like 5 months, after my first initial finding of it, and it was just obviously I was going through a lot.
Yeah.
And my parents did come home from work that day, and it was around like 4 p.m. I didn't know how to, come upstairs and like really sit down with them. Like my mom's a very emotional person, and so she obviously was worried about this entire procedure to begin with, and
Wait, you
uh,
said she is or isn't emotional?
she is
Oh,
like she will start crying like
oh,
tomorrow, and so um, I had to do it separately almost because I couldn't handle sitting like both of them down, and so. I told my dad first. He had just got home, and I caught him before he even came in the door. I took him out in the garage, and him and I have got along obviously great growing up. I mean, he's a great dad, and I had to sit him down on the bench outside. I was like, "We need to talk," and I don't want to talk about in front of mom right now because I'm gonna get emotional. She's gonna get emotional, and my dad wasn't like he hadn't gone to every single appointment, but he knew, of course, what was going on, and so I sat him down and I told him. I mean, I think it was really like one of the hardest things I had to do between my dad and mom both, sitting them down, and he was also in a state of shock because nothing like that has ever happened in our like, immediate family, at least. Cancer. Everybody. Somebody in your life that has cancer almost like at all
yeah.
times. There's cancer affects a lot of people, and I just didn't think my dad expected that from me. His son that was 19.
And he
And
was told it was benign, too.
yep, yep, benign. And so, he gave me a hug and said, "We'll figure this out." And I guess from there I had to go inside and confront my mom of, "Hey, this is going on." And so I asked her to sit down because she was gonna freak out. And so I asked her to sit down at the kitchen table, and I was like, "All right." So I got the results back from the pathology, and I need you to like take a deep breath. I think I said, and I said, "I have cancer." And those words hit pretty hard to her because at first, the very first reaction that she had to me saying that was she thought I was kind of joking because I kind of joke around with her a lot. I mean, I'm not very serious, and I was
So
just saying,
weird sense of humor you must have then.
I have a little bit of sense of humor, yeah. And so her very first thought was, "Oh, really cool. Are you joking with me right now?" And I was like, and then I looked at her, I'm like, "No, mom, I have cancer, like right now. Like we have to figure out what to do." And at that point, she was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so she immediately started crying and getting emotional, just like I expected her to. And so I gave her a hug, and honestly, I think I was consoling her more than she was consoling me at that time.
Gives you a
Uh,
distraction.
yes, and so I love my mom. I'm kind of like a mama's boy, and being able to just, sit her down was probably the hardest thing I had to do because I was crying, she was crying, and it was a very hard thing to sit your parents down and not have anybody else there. I was 19. I didn't even know what the next steps truly were. It was the same day I found out, and she's like, and as soon as I told her, like, I found out this morning at 1 a.m. She was really upset with me that I didn't come to them. Like she's like, "Why didn't you wake me up? Why didn't you come to us?" And I was like, "Mom, I didn't know what to think. I had so much to process in my head."
Yeah.
So, tell me
Her
my parents.
mother instincts kick in.
What's that?
Her mother instincts kick in.
Of course, yes, yes.
Just
And
wants
so,
to be there for her baby.
yep. And so, I was very upfront with my parents about everything. I immediately told, my sister, as soon as she came home that day. And from there on, it was really just, like figuring out the next doctor appointment.
So I guess now you go from 5.5 months, you get it removed. Now you're dealing with from benign to they remove everything, but now you're coming back in cancer. So now they've got to figure out where. Also, I'm guessing
Yep,
that probably wasn't part of the first initial diagnosis they were doing and how they went about it.
correct.
So, like, what were the next steps? Because you can't even figure out treatment yet until they figure out exactly what it is.
Yep. And so when I got the results, it was papillary carcinoma, which is a form of thyroid cancer. So we knew what the type of cancer it was. And the next steps for me were to go back into their clinic, meet with them, have another ultrasound done because really the only ultrasounds that were performed were on the left side where the lump was. Well, your thyroid, you have two lobes, so they obviously there's a
Wow.
whole other part of my thyroid which your thyroid's connected. So if one side
Yeah.
has cancer, the other
The
side's
others.
probably going to have cancer. And then along with the lymph nodes around the surrounding areas they were concerned about because the mass was so large that they were surprised that one, I was able to breathe normally, and two, that it had not spread, like more further like this way where there was more lumps. And so luckily, I had a great team, to work with there. They told me, the next steps. I think from finding out that I had cancer until my next surgery was a span of 3 months.
So it took them 3 more months to diagnose and figure out treatment.
It was not necessarily, I guess it wasn't all treatment discussions. However, I had two other second opinions. I
Okay.
think I was a little bit of a stubborn 19-year-old at that time. So I knew I found out I had cancer. However, when you remove your entire thyroid, you have to be on a medication for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And when I learned that, I was pretty frustrated. I was 19. I was so healthy prior to this whole thing, I thought at least, and I didn't want to have to be on a medication for the rest of my life. I think when I heard those words at 19, I was like, that's not something I really want to do. And of course, I was probably being selfish, and I just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Well, you have to do that to survive. Like that's what the doctors were telling me. Like we need to take out your right side because there is probably cancer on that side, and so. And it was a combination of me being a little stubborn. I saw the first doctor for a second opinion. Basically, he concurred that, yep, this is what we have to do. You have to have a surgery to remove the rest of your thyroid, and you will see if there's any more cancer beyond that. And I didn't take his advice. I think I basically I was like, no, like I want to figure out what else I can do. Is there another procedure? So I think I started Googling of like, is there other radiation treatments that you can do just to minimize any cancer cells that could be in there? And really, anytime you put radiation or any chemo, which I didn't have to do luckily, towards your
Lucky you
thyroid,
didn't do the chemo, if that's
yeah,
what, because
like if you
chemo
put
is
it
like,
towards your thyroid immediately like dies. Like your thyroid cells like are killed, of course, through that radiation treatment, and that's kind of just what I didn't want to do. Like I was trying to avoid it, so I saw a third doctor, I believe at the Mayo Clinic, and she was the final say of like, hey, you need to listen to your first surgeon. This has to happen. And so at that time, I just listened.
it's why they're the Mayo Clinic.
Yes.
Uh, um, so now we're on like, if I'm doing, so we're at like 7, 8 months,
Yep.
and for several months you're now, but you're trying to. I don't know if it's avoiding it. Maybe you're being a stubborn child, but you're also trying to find the best possible alternative or more knowledge.
Yep.
Because do you think you might have done that because you were also like, okay, well, the first doctors got it completely wrong.
Yeah, I think I was not prepared for that cancer diagnosis. So I was questioning every single thing that had happened prior, and I wanted to make sure that my care, was, I was advocating for myself, making sure that I don't just remove the rest of my thyroid because I won't ever have that back. There's no transplants, there's nothing. And so I'm removing, this from my body, and it's never going back in. I'll be on a medication the rest of my life dealing with, complications. After I found out, I had my, cancer diagnosis, I reached out to a few other people, in the community. I mean, I was trying any way to find a younger person or just somebody in my shoes to learn what they had to go through. And funny enough, one of our family friends, not funny, I guess, she actually went through thyroid cancer herself like 2 years prior. And
Oh, wow.
so I got on a call with her and I just wanted to talk to somebody. I think just finding somebody else in a similar situation is what anybody would try and do, or at least learn from. And so I called her up. We got on the phone. We spoke about everything. She, sent me some pictures of what she, had to go through surgical wise. And she had, her entire thyroid removed in one surgery. So, a little bit different than mine. They knew it was cancer from the biopsy. So, she knew it was cancer up front. They had the surgery and everything. And so she's like, I feel great. Like I'm on the medication for the rest of my life, but I'm happy and I'm healthy now. And
And
that's,
alive.
yes,
And,
exactly.
and alive.
Yes, and so I think in my stubbornness, I was like, all right, I get, I totally understand. Like, I need to do this, and I think I was just trying to look for alternatives, and there were none.
So now let's jump into this. So now you know what you have to go through, and now I guess you've got to go in for a second
Yep.
thyroid. Now, do you have to go through any treatments before that, or is it all after it? How does it work, and what type of treatments were you doing?
The only treatment that I just had blood work, those periodically throughout those 3 months. I guess one thing that I mean, I'm not sure if, but my very first second opinion that I had was at a for-profit hospital where, like they are all about making profit.
Yeah.
And I don't think I want to name it just out of respect. I don't know, like I don't want to like, and basically when I went in for that second opinion, they did tell me I had to have the procedure to remove the rest of my thyroid. But what they didn't is as soon as I got there, they ran. I saw the bag of vials that they like drew. So like I had to get blood work from them. They immediately did blood work, even though I just had blood work at the other hospital, and I brought those papers with me of like, this is my blood work. What do you think I should do? They didn't even want to look at those, and they basically said, all right, we're gonna do blood work, our own blood work. And there was probably 10 vials of blood that they took out, and they
Yeah.
just immediately started throwing every single procedure, or like like blood work at me, test. And then they're like, yep, we need to do the surgery, like we can perform it here, you're gonna stay, like I think they even said I was gonna have to stay like 2 nights, which I was outpatient my first surgery, and they were asking me to stay 2 nights. And so it really started to make me like, I don't like this place, I want to get out.
It was clicking the difference between like how to find those who are in it for the money and those who are in it who make money but do it because of the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And as soon as I felt that, like, I was like, why are they doing so much blood work? I just had it done. Oh, another thing is, they did it, was it an MRI or another ultrasound? One of the two. I think it was an ultrasound that they did or something again. Like, they did another ultrasound, even though I just had one. And they were just trying to, I think, just ring every bell up that they could, because obviously they knew I had other procedures. Obviously, once insurance hits, like everything's covered. It was crazy. Like, I was just
Yeah.
like, I wanted to leave immediately. And I didn't feel like comforted and cared about at that hospital, and so that's why I immediately left. But yes, so sorry to kind of backtrack a little bit, but I just
No,
think,
I mean, I think it's great. I think people should know it. Again, it comes down to people, they freak people out, and they
mhm,
probably were over exaggerating things that you probably now had known from 7 months of like talking to doctors. You kind of now are a little bit more keen on what the terminology is and what needs to be done. You're not a doctor, you're not going to know everything. And they might not know everything in one place, but you're like starting to see, like they won't look at blood work, but they'll take more blood work. Okay, maybe if they said, well, we need to compare it now for our data, just they didn't even say that. Like I know those doctors, and those are scary because
yeah,
people just, especially like with the elderly, they'll just go and they'll go back to them over and over again, and it's
because
just
they don't know any better.
when I was growing up. It was always like you just trusted your doctor. You never second guessed it because they were God.
Yep.
And later on, I learned that was no longer.
Yep.
If you don't question everything, then you're not going into seeing a doctor with the right mindset. And it's not that they're right or wrong, but it's like I'll see, like, if I get like a crazy diagnosis on like something stupid, I'll go for a second opinion, but I won't tell them that I saw a first doctor yet, just so that I can compare and contrast two
Sure.
completely different doctors. And then if they're drastically different, I'll go see a third doctor with both of the reports, and I'll be like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Because I used to just go, oh yeah, you have to go here, you're fine, blah blah blah. You have to go have another surgery, you'll be in the hospital over the weekend. And I did it. And like no one knew what I was going, through. And I would show back up at work at like Monday late afternoon. And people were like, how are you? I was like, I'm a little tired, long weekend. Like, so it's like crazy. Like, I want people to know that they've got to be advocates for themselves.
Yep.
And if you can't take your mom or your father or a family member, take a friend, take someone who will go. Listen also, because you as a patient don't hear shit.
Hmm.
When they're telling you anything, it goes in this ear, out the other ear, or never makes it into your brain because you're either in a panic, overexcited because you're nervous, or you've just lost the ability to like hear anything because you're just in a tunnel now, trying to just
Yep.
get through the process. So I think it's a integral part because that then led you to I guess the third one, which would Mayo Clinic, right?
Yeah.
Which
And then from there, I was really just like, I was content. I was like, yep, I have to do this now. There's no other alternative, surgery or anything like that I can do to keep my thyroid. I'd have to go on medication for the rest of my life. And so this surgery was scheduled for early December. So, at that point, I think it was 8 months total, I think, like of like this whole process of like trying to navigate that.
no
Um,
vacations coming up in the way.
no, there was no vacations or anything planned during that time. I think that entire period of my life, yeah, it might have been even 9 months, I think, in total. But either way, like there was nothing planned. I was just trying to make sure I was advocating for myself and getting healthy. So the surgery was, scheduled. Had the surgery in December, and luckily enough, I had the same surgeon as before. I was very happy with her, so I did the
Wow.
same procedure. I went back, to my original doctors that did the first procedure, and I fully expected them to have to like do a larger incision to go
I was
find
gonna say,
lymph nodes, and somehow it was the same incision mark. So they went back into the same incision mark.
it
Um,
just went the other way.
and went the other way and took out the rest of my thyroid, and it sounds like they did test a few other things like along the way of this procedure, and they didn't have to take out any major lymph nodes, so it was luckily just the right side of my thyroid. Procedure came back, it went great. I was outpatient same day, no staying overnight. I again was recovering for like 3 weeks or so, and in that time, actually no, I did not get the results back in those like 3 weeks. It took over like a month to get those results back. I
Why
don't know.
so long?
I don't know. I think it was just like there was backup at the lab or something because I did
Of
call like
course.
a couple times, and I hadn't heard back, and so they did find more cancer on that side, and so I mean it was good that I
They
listened.
removed or that you still had in your body?
I still had in my body because it was on the right side,
Okay.
so it was on the right lobe of my thyroid.
At that point did they confirm that they had gotten it all?
Yes. So I guess at that point they didn't confirm that they had everything. They wanted to do one more procedure. They had told me that they removed the entire thyroid and what they could find as in cancer. But your thyroid cells, flow throughout your body, and so there could be other cancer cells that are just out there. Now that they found cancer on both sides, and so they suggested I do a radiation treatment. I researched a little bit, kind of learned. Obviously, they told me what I would have to do, and then that was scheduled for probably about a month later. I had the radiation treatment. It was very simple. It was just a pill. So I just swallowed a pill, and the radiation treatment was kind of like,
One pill and done?
yeah, it was one pill, and then basically what that does is it inserts like radiation in your body, but it kills off any cancer cells that were like near your thyroid, and I don't know how it like targets them, but I had that procedure done, and then when you take radiation, when you're in chemo, anything, you try and stay away from you don't want to put the harm of other people. And so because I was with radiation, I had to like use my own bathroom for like a week. I had to like do different things that were just separate from everybody else because they obviously, it was cause for concern. I didn't want to put radiation on other people.
Okay, now that's wild because I've, I don't know if I've never actually thought of it, but no one's ever really mentioned that side. That pill is so powerful
Mm-hmm.
that for a week they tell you to stay away from people because you can give them radiation.
Yeah, I had to stay within arm's length of like people base, the best I could, of course. But like, yeah, like I was kind of just arm's length, and I used my own bathroom. Obviously, like just kind of like my own space, just out of cautious to not make sure that other people are getting radiation from me.
Is it also so that like hopefully you don't get sick during that period also, so like you're not around germs and stuff?
I'm sure it's a combination. Yeah, I'm sure it's a combination of both.
Because you don't want your body weaker.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. So, so you go through all this. It's now like 10 months from beginning to
Yeah,
end.
we're on there.
And do you ever have in your mind then or now, like how could they have just if they would have just realized this or done something else like the first time around, this would have been 5 months and done. The rest of my life would have been different. I would have handled this different. I would have seen things differently. Does that ever stay in your mind? Because I want to make sure that if there's a young kid watching this, they know to question things like that and like how what you've learned from that, if that's okay to ask. Because no, it's a little personal, but you have a sense of humor, it seems, with this, so which is healthy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, I laugh about it now, of course, after going through everything, I can make jokes about it. But one thing that it is serious to me is that if you ever notice anything at all wrong with your body, if there's a lump, if there's a scratch, you're kind of bleeding too much. I mean, there's so many things that could go, wrong. Make sure you like get it checked out. Don't wait the few months. Like, make sure you are calling your doctor, asking a friend, like, hey, like, do you think like, like my arm looks a little like, larger than the other one? Like, there's just so many things that, we as adults get concerned about of asking other people, or I mean, kids in general too, like insecure about asking people, like, hey, like we're insecure about, asking something about our body that we feel is wrong, but you need another person's opinion. And then you just kind of forget about it. You try and move on. But in that moment, like, I wish I knew that it was cancer up front because I didn't have to draw it out. I didn't have to go to 3 doctors in total. I could have just had this procedure done one time. I didn't have to go through it twice. Have the same procedure done, and I wouldn't have to have wasted, well, not wasted, just I wouldn't have to have gone through these months and months and months of doctor visits and making sure that I'm staying, healthy and eating right and all this stuff. And so, if there is a little kid watching, I would just, tell them, like, if there is anything wrong with your body at all that you feel, just make sure you go to the doctor to get it checked out, regardless of if it's small or large.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Also, because now if you don't ask those questions, so much of your time taken away from you.
Hmm.
Thankfully, you're young and you're strong and you're healthy, which is also a very positive thing. I'm guessing because did you say track and field or just?
I was supposed to run track, but yeah, I mean, I growing up, I played baseball, track, soccer, and basketball.
And do you eat relatively well for a kid, or like how's your health? The way you eat now, I bet, is very different than
It's a
before.
little bit different now, of course. I mean, I'm not in my prime teenage years of, being able to do 4 sports year round. But yes, I mean, I was always very active, eating healthy. I mean, I think I could consume so much food. I mean, I was consuming, like growing up, like just like I would eat and eat, eat and not stop.
Yeah.
And of course, that hits everybody at a certain point. And so now I have like my meals, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But yeah.
But like, are you making sure that like you're paying attention to like what you put in your body? Like people don't talk about it enough, but especially now because food is so different than what it was even 20 years ago.
Yep.
And you're in Wisconsin, so you probably have farm food, which is probably healthier than what most people get.
Most, yeah.
It's fresh. So, like during this journey, and now, did anything or anyone help you through it at all, or make it a little bit less worrisome, or just be able to outside of your family that was able to be there for you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple people that come to mind right away. For one, obviously my family was there immediately for me up front. They were through the entire process. Some of my best friends from high school, maybe they have been, there for me from the very beginning. I think I drove over to my best friend's house one day, like when I first found out. Like I drove over to her house and I walked up the front door and I opened the door. I was like, "Hey, can we talk for a second?" Like I hadn't even texted her yet, and I shared everything with her, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like thank you so much for telling me." And like having family and friends there is like really really important. And so they were there from the very beginning. I think my mom kind of had obviously spoken to a few people during that time, just community members and just friends and stuff. And the school that I went to, my high school actually did a community fundraiser for me. So like they
Aw.
did like a basketball. It was a basketball night, for girls and boys basketball teams. They did like a 50-50 raffle or some sort, and they just kind of raised money for me, obviously going through this process. And I mean, it was really cool just to show up back at my high school where I spent so much time of my life,
Yeah.
and they were there to support me.
That's very sweet. Is it a big, and don't make fun of me for this question, is it a big town or is it like one of these small towns in like Wisconsin?
It's a smaller town, so I mean, I went to Milton High School, which
That's
has
famous.
yeah,
So,
nothing famous. Well, I guess the Underground Railroad's in Milton, Wisconsin, so like there was that. But otherwise, our town is like 5,000, 6,000 people. So it was a relatively small community.
but that's where like small communities come
Yeah.
together. So
Yep. So no,
that's
they supported me during that time, and I mean, it was such an amazing experience being able to walk back on the court. Just show thank you to everybody. I mean, they were just there to support me.
that in itself is always a blessing. So I guess I have a couple more questions. Did you, because I feel like now we're off summer and there's college still. Did you drop out at this point or were you still going?
I
Or
did. Yeah, I guess I did leave that part out. So I did stop
sorry.
school.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. I did stop school. So I was navigating doctor visits and just what the next steps were and surgeries. And so I did take a break from school. So I took about a year and a half off in total, just to kind of have a reset. I obviously was done, I guess in the spring of that time. And then I took a year and a half off just because I needed it. I needed to take a break. I couldn't focus on school and this
Makes sense.
cancer diagnosis and everything. So the kids in our age group, I mean, I was 19. Anybody in that 18 to 24 age group it's a weird time in your life. You are either moving out of your parents' house, you're going to college, you're kind of alone, you're making new friends, you're trying to figure out your place in the world. And so it's there's such a big time of your life of figuring out what to do. And I knew what I had to do at that time was take a break from school. I knew I wanted to go back. I needed to get healthy, figure stuff out at home, health wise, of course, and then go from there.
Did you still have the dreams and admirations of being architect? Because it was architecture, right?
It was
Or
engineering. Yes.
engineering.
I did. However, I guess I would say once I went back to school, after that year and a half, there was just a lot of emotions going on, and I didn't want to go back necessarily to the same campus that I was at. There's just, there was a lot of emotions that I was going through, and I didn't want to go back there. And so I really just tried to find a degree or something that is similar to what I was doing because I was studying environmental engineering. And so once I went back to school, I have now since graduated with my degree in sustainability. So I'm still in like that environmental field. But I guess I would say during that time, I was like, nope, I'm not going back to college. Not right now, at least. I need to take a break. My family supported me with that decision. Of course, I was navigating hospital visits and stuff. And so anybody in that situation, you have to do that. You have to make sure you get healthy first. And I would say there was actually one other organization that reached out to me during that time that did support me quite a bit. And I didn't really know about them to begin with. And I got a phone call one day, completely random number. It was kind of like spam to me. I was like, okay, I don't know who's calling me. So I picked up, and it was this organization called Nick's Wish. And I had never heard of them before. And she kind of explained, the lady that was on the phone, explained what Nick's Wish does, what their organization provides. They're a charity, and I guess they grant wishes to young adults battling cancer, ages 18 to 24. And I had never heard of them. They're based out of Rockford, Illinois, and I live, in Wisconsin, so it's very close, like along the border there.
So they had heard about like your community outreach, or they
Yeah,
heard
they must have heard through, the event that, at my high school or, some sort of social media. They must have heard about my story and they reached out to me. They got my phone number and they reached out to me and they shared what their organization does with me. And like, honestly, I had no idea. And so I had heard about Make-A-Wish. Of course, Make-A-Wish is a great organization that supports, pediatric age kids with all illnesses. And so really, I was like, wow, like this is an organization that is for this age group because there's such a gap. I mean, really 18 to 24, like I said earlier, so much, so much change is going on that it's, a lot to navigate. And what they do is they grant wishes. And so they immediately ask like, hey, like, would you like to submit an application to our program and come up with a wish? And so I was like, yeah, I would love to take a look at it. And so like, I gave her my email, exchanged information, and she sent me the application form, for their organization. Of course, I researched what they have already done. I mean, they truly, were doing great things for young adults across the entire country. And so, of course, I was like, I'll submit an application. I, went through it with my parents. I, submitted my application, and my wish request that I had on there was a trip to Hawaii with my family. But being able to take a family trip to Hawaii just sounded like what I needed during that time. As I had been through so much, relax and just enjoy family time because, we were constantly going to these doctor visits and surgeries and recovery and everything. And there was a lot going, there's everybody that goes through cancer knows how much they have to go through, during that time. And so I put the request in. And that was like kind of the last I heard of them for about 3 months. So like, they had first reached out during my span of 3 months, I would say around like, I don't know, like around November, December, prior to that second surgery, and they reached out, and then I hadn't heard from them for about like maybe 4 months, I would say. Didn't know where my wish request was, what it meant, truthfully, until now, of course. And
that probably was in the back of your mind with everything else, like
I put it in. I was like, this is an amazing organization. I'll put it in, great. And I was trying to get healthy myself. Come to find out, they were working behind the scenes with my family, like my mom and dad.
oh wow.
And I had no idea. And what they do is they do wish reveals. And so they showed up at my parents' house with 30 volunteers, our famous wish lamp that is about 20 feet long, 10 feet high. It's an eye popper on the road. And they showed up with confetti cannons, signs, noisemakers, and they showed up at my doorstep. I opened the door and they granted my wish. I mean, it was something I had no idea even could happen at that time, but my parents obviously knew about it. And it just brought out so much joy and happiness that I started crying. I mean, they were all there to support me again. I mean, having people there to support you it's such an amazing thing. And so this organization granted my wish to go to Hawaii with my parents, or family, I guess, in general.
Oh, that's very, very sweet. Also, what a great way to like just break the mindset of what you've been through. Just that shock and awe to now just go. Which island did you go to or wish for?
So we visited the Big Island. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I had never visited before, and so it's kind of why I wanted to, try something new, tropical. And they really, I mean, it's a fully expense paid trip out there with your family. And so, obviously, the next steps with, Nick's wish was to kind of figure out how, my family and I were going to get out there.
So I'm going to ask you because you said something there that you said our organization when they were coming to your house. You want to explain how it's your organization?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just Habit now, but it wasn't my organization. It's obviously not our organization now, or then at that time. So, at that time, I was just a 19-year-old. I was out of college. I was, navigating, life at the time, and they showed up on my doorstep and granted my wish. What I didn't know is from that point on, I would be, a part of this organization's family and just joining them in bringing joy to other young adults. And since they were so close to my house, as in, where I was living at the time, they're based in Rockford, Illinois, I really wanted to start, just coming to their events, learning more about what they are able to do, for other young adults in the area across the U.S. And so I started, showing up and volunteering. I would show up, I'd help at the tables, for signing in, anything like that. And then what I would do at the event, which was really out of my comfort zone, is I would share my story, just kind of like I did now, in a shorter version. But yes, like I would get up in front of the crowd, which really wasn't in my comfort zone, and I would share everything that I went through and what Nick's wish has provided my family and I. And they were all there to support Nick's wish. And so I really just cemented what it meant.
So they kind of gave you a new purpose.
They did. Yep. I mean, they completely changed my entire life when they granted my wish.
Well, that sounds even more beautiful than I think anyone would understand, because you were just like, I'm done with everything else what college taught me. This has been an incredible organization, because you're doing a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't do. And I don't think you give yourself credit for that enough. So I'll give you credit. Most people, it's not even stepping outside your comfort zone, because you do this fine. So I don't believe it's that much different, and shorter is quicker. So I hate being on camera. You seem to like it. But I will say, most, not even kids, even adults, it doesn't matter what age, most people don't go, okay, they just did something awesome for me as a cancer patient. Now I want to give back to them. Most people are like, thank God I'm alive. I need to get back to my life. And I need to just, again, it goes back to, I trust the doctors. I'm going to be fine. I need to like get back to just feeling normal. And their normal was what was before, not what came after. So you're being very proactive, and to know that you were like, this made so much more sense to me. And you were able to do that seemingly more easier than like not putting off a vacation for a couple weeks to have a surgery. But or maybe that's what you learned from that.
I think that's what I did learn. I mean, once you hear the words cancer and like that you have cancer, it completely changed my entire outlook on life. I was just, it was entirely changed. And so the organization provided me so much joy and happiness that I wanted to give back and, meet other young adults in my shoes that, have gone through other gruesome, things that are just not, like, I guess, happy. And so we were trying to bring them more joy. And so I started volunteering for them, for, I guess, a couple of years here. I was volunteering for them. I actually had the very first Wisconsin golf event formed with 2 other wish recipients. So I got together in a team. I was like, hey guys, let's have a golf outing, figure it out. And so, Kelly and her team, they helped me with everything, navigating how to set up a golf outing. And in the end, we raised $50,000, for Nick's wish, and which is an amazing amount of money, to support kids. And I mean, these wishes are not cheap nowadays. Like they're averaging around like, about $9,500, like $10,000 for one wish. And so making sure, we're raising enough funds to get, more kids these wishes, to bring them some joy is really, really cool. And I had no real nonprofit background. However, I had a purpose and I had a story, and people listened to that. And Kelly, the founder of this organization, really, really resonated with everything I was doing for them. And she immediately was like, Cole, I want you on the team. Like, we need you on the team. You're going to do such great things. Your story is so moving. You're going to, bring Nick's wish to like the next level that we need to be, nationally. And so being able to hear that, it definitely, resonated with me. And I was like, maybe this is my purpose. Maybe it's not, sitting behind a desk and just, doing math calculations or anything like that. Like, this is something that I can wake up and be happy about. And so, yes, last year, officially, I joined the Nick's Wish team, which is like something I'm really, proud and happy to say.
And Kelly is the founder, it sounds like.
Yep, she's the founder, and she's our chief joy officer. So essentially, she manages the day-to-day operations, and she's doing so much. I mean, she is a powerhouse of a woman. I have been so inspired by her. I mean, just her tenacity to do everything. I mean, she works like 12 hours a day to make sure all these young adults are getting their wishes granted. I mean, that is the whole goal of this organization.
Sounds like she found her calling too.
She did. Yes, she did.
I mean, I'll say this if it's allowed, but you'll have to get her on this then, because we need to hear why she does it to get people like you an opportunity. Because, I mean, she took your wish to a whole nother level.
She did. She changed my entire life. I mean, my entire trajectory was changed by Nick's Wish. If I had not heard about them or reached out to me, I don't know where I'd be right now. They really make sure each and every life they touch is, supported and cared about.
I think that's beautiful. And I know it's like a weird thing to say, but like you'll understand it, but like people who haven't gone through it don't. But like cancer community is like the strongest community I've ever met. And like from caregivers, it's friends, it's families, it's everyone's affected by cancer, not just the patient. And the patient has it the hardest, but people forget it's like a community behind them always, because it's so long. And I don't know, how old are you now?
I'm 23.
So you're 23. So in this 4-year period, roughly, you went through all these ups and downs, changed your whole entire life and your plan. And now you're doing something because of what you went through, which is a beautiful thing. I mean,
Hmm.
you've got to know that.
Yep.
But it's like it's when we find our purpose because of pain, it's weird,
Hmm.
but the passion becomes so much greater.
Yeah, I think it was something that I became so strongly, I guess, opinionated about. Like, I wanted to make sure that other young adults in my shoes didn't have to go through those, extra doctor visits, and really just, advocate for themselves. So any person I meet, I always tell them that. And being able to bring joy to all these young adults has been such an amazing experience. I mean, seeing what they've gone through, and then I've lived it as well now, and I can relate to them. I mean, I have spoken to so many young adults that we've supported, and they are so grateful for what we're able to do. And that's all because of our supporters. I mean, we would not be anywhere without our donors and corporate sponsorships and everything. Nick's Wish does so much good for this world, and we're hoping to bring that more out.
Well, I think that's beautiful. So God
Yes.
bless. So let me round this up because I gotta tell you, it's always reassuring, one, but also inspiring to hear young adult. Like, if we could just bring it back for like a second now, and it's like, what do you think going through cancer taught you the most right now? If you had to give like that insight to someone.
Sure. I think having gone through cancer the most to me is it showed me to live in the moment and like give a hug to your loved ones. Like always, say good night, good morning, whatever you need to. Like you have to live every day almost like it's your last because life can change in an instant. Like I honestly, I had no idea I, was going to have to go through that. I was sitting in class and I scratched my neck. My life entirely changed from that moment. You have to make sure you are doing whatever's going to make you happy in life now and not look towards the future. Do it now. And I think that's just the best advice I can give is making sure you're doing everything to live the best life that you want to. Regardless of your situation, make happy decisions and live in the moment.
Create moments of joy and love. Because your moments you make with others, and those will last a lifetime of memories for other people too.
Yep.
And take as many pictures. That's my biggest thing I tell people. People laugh at me because I'm a dude who like sits here with my iPhone. And people
Yeah.
are like, "Why?" I was like, because growing up, I lost everyone. I don't have photos of my life because we didn't have cameras. We didn't have video camera. I'm that old. But like, you don't have those moments. And it's like, I see people now, they're like, oh, look, this is like family vacation. I was like, I don't have any of those pictures. And unfortunately, memories fade
Yep.
when you don't have them around you or talking about them. So it's like, it's a beautiful thing. Capture every moment you can.
Hmm.
Today is what you're living in, so live it. Now, I do want to ask one question. This is one thing I feel like I'm going to start like taking charts on this for like statistics through the year of this podcast. You're now 3 years out from the last procedure. Now, do they tell you you're in remission or cancer free?
I believe their words were remission. So like, I mean, obviously, I think it was remission at the time. They did share with me, which I actually have not. I don't think I've shared this with too many people, but after my second procedure, they shared that I have a 25% chance of recurrence.
Did they give you the 5 year mark?
I don't think it was a 5 year mark directly given to me. I would just have to have yearly monitoring. So I have that, and maybe they'll tell me at 5 years that I'm good. But it was like basically they're telling me I'm in remission, and then I had to basically have this annual procedure, I guess checkup to make sure that I'm all healthy. But they did tell me I have a 25% chance of recurrence.
Oh, wow. So does that stay in the back of your head at all? Or do you
Oh yeah.
just, you're like, it,
I mean,
and I'm
it's definitely there, but I've avoided it for so long. Now I'm just like, I'm just gonna live life. Like I can't sit and dwell over this. If
right.
it happens again. We'll figure it out what to do next. I mean, I'm just trying to like from the day the last procedure I had, I have lived life completely different. I live freely. I basically, I changed my lifestyle. Eating habits, working out, making new friends. I'm more outgoing. Like it's just there's so much more to life than sitting and just dwelling about one thing. Like live
Yeah,
life. You only get one.
exactly. And if you do it well enough, you don't want to live it twice. So there you go. I mean, I'm all about proactive, so I love that. And I love that you at least have the right, you have a great mindset, which I think you should be like proud of. Your mom did well, it seems,
Thank you.
raising.
Thank you.
And your dad, but it sounds like your mom probably mothered you.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's all right. But it sounds like you have the right team now. So that's all that matters. Is
Yeah, I mean,
is
my team has been great to me. The system that the health system that I go to, I probably get my blood work done just because when you're on the thyroid medication, so I mean it's called levothyroxine. So essentially it's a medication that's, to regulate your thyroid that you no longer have. And this medication can change a lot of things about your body, as in like it can, sometimes I can't sleep. I can't sleep very well. And so like there's still after effects that I feel from this, cancer journey that do affect me. I can get moody sometimes where, if my medication, if it's not working correctly, where I can get moody pretty fast, where I'm like high intense, like way too quickly, where before I would have been so calm, like, oh, that doesn't bother me. But now like little things do bother me. And it's just, it's not having a thyroid to regulate, your hormones, your body
Yeah.
temperature. Like it does a lot.
So do you regularly have to change the dosage? Or is it just your
It,
body cycling through it?
Probably in the last like year and a half, they have not changed the dosage. Prior to that, right after the last procedure, they had to probably take like 6 to 8 months to figure out what the best dosage it was going to be for myself. So they haven't done it in a while, but I still feel the after effects of not having a thyroid.
Well, you look good and you sound good, so and you're
Thank you.
alive.
Yes.
That living thing is crucial,
Yeah, I'm
I'll
alive. I'm
say.
here.
Yeah. That's so cool. I just want to take like a moment and I just want to express thank you so much for being part of this and just what I like to say is just being raw and real because uncensored. You shared a lot of like details and aren't shy from like the right and wrong moves that kids can make, which I find good because you're so ahead of your time in something that's so scary that A, you should be proud of yourself, but B, I love that it's now part of like your journey. I think God gives his hardest tasks as far as people that they chose. So like you found your path.
Yep.
And I feel like somewhere inside you, you know that like all this had the purpose of going down this road and you've gotten very lucky. It could have gone a different way. You've learned how to be an advocate. So I just want to just I'm grateful that you found us because that's the beautiful part about social media. That is the good side. And I think your story is going to resonate with so many people and inspire people and also make people go, huh, maybe I shouldn't put this off for a vacation. And,
Turn it off.
and
Cancel
talk,
notification.
yeah, cancel the vacation. But I thank you for your time and I thank you for sharing all of it and for including things that I guess people didn't even know. So thank you for the honor of that.
No, and I want to thank you for having me as your guest on this podcast today. I had been following Bring a Voice for quite a while, and once you started doing these podcasts, I just resonated with them so much. Like I mean, I just like hearing other people's stories. Like when you have a story, you can really like get people's attention and just share it, and then they actually listen. It's not just something they scroll past. And so I've listened to every single podcast that you've done,
Oh, wow.
and I have obviously enjoyed listening, and that's why I reached out, and I'm glad that we were able to set this up, and I've loved sharing my story with you, and then obviously now anybody that's going to be able to hear it. If one person, if this changes one person's life or one person's perspective, that's all that matters to me. That's all that I care about. Like making sure that at least one person's life is changed, or if they need to go to the doctor and they've been concerned about not going, like as long as they can, hear this, I'm happy. So I want to thank you for bringing me on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you. That's got me a little speechless. So thank you. Just some rapid fire. What's your favorite food?
Sushi, any type of seafood.
As a Wisconsin boy?
Yeah,
I love sushi.
I live on the beach now. I'm in seafood land.
Oh yeah, sushi is my one of my favorites. What's your favorite music or artist right now?
I would say my favorite type is probably like pop or country. Like country, I grew up, like listening to country, like Florida Georgia Line. Like they were like my younger years.
I guess this is one of those odder like rapid fires. What's your one thing that you go to when you're stressed out? What do you do to de-stress?
De-stress, I eat a bowl of ice cream.
Haha. What flavor?
I guess well this week it was like chocolate chunk road or something or Rocky Road. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah, but
That's
like
an old
vanilla with like chocolate chunks. Yeah, that's mine.
You have a favorite TV show?
I do. Yeah, Survivor.
Is that still around?
Yes, they just had their 50th season.
That's too many.
I will say it is a lot, but I still enjoy it just because I've been watching it for so long.
So what makes you smile these days? What's the thing that brings you joy?
Being able to see the sunset, like just looking out, and I mean, obviously my location, I have an opportunity to see the sunset almost every night, And I take a sunset walk almost every, night to walk out there and just take what's all in, like all the air, breathing in fresh air, of just being able to hear the ocean, waves hitting the sand. Like it's all in the moment for me. Like being able to know that I made it. I'm here now. I'm doing something great as a career, bringing so much joy to other kids. And now I get to just live life. And I get to do that by watching the sunset.
This has been a blast. I appreciate you, bro. That's
Yeah, no,
this,
I've been very thankful to get to know you more.
you too. Well, you're part of this family now, so you'll have another annoying person that will check in on you.